Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker, formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. When his health failed, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He found a haven in a working-class district of the city known as Little Russia. There Isaac took on a new name, Ishmael. He then became embroiled in the affairs of a brutal member of the Lamadiza organized crime family, known as Leo. Convinced by his longtime friend Frankie to flee from his commitments to the Lamadiza family, Isaac found himself hunted by the ruthless Leo. On a rooftop, far from witnesses, Leo murdered Frankie. Only through the use of his skills as a hacker was Isaac able to drive Leo off. Wounded, alone, and far from help, Isaac depended on the kindness of strangers. One stranger, a burqa-wearing doctor known as Fatima, took pity on Isaac and helped him make his way to the mysterious Star X line. At the end of all hope, they found the Star X line and the slim promise that the enigmatic beings behind the Star X could save Isaac from the implants which destroyed his life. What do you do when those who saved you have recorded everything you are? What do you do when your every action is tracked by the Keylogger? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment in the firmware pentology by Colbytrax. I had to debate where to focus my search for finding spots for a bit. And then I remembered the night Frankie died. I had been hiding on a roof near Ivanova's on Sheridan. Masood, an observant Georgian Muslim, had sent help in the form of heating and air conditioning repairmen. Masood had needed me to cause a problem, so the workers would have a reason to be on the roof. I had triggered the computers controlling the HVAC units, simultaneously shutting them all down and calling for assistance. Now, the shutting down of the building's HVAC systems wasn't the reason this event came to mind. The reason it came to mind was what the repairmen did when they arrived on site. When the workmen arrived, they had taken off the panels on the AC units and reset them with probes. I remember wondering if they knew the systems were networked. I knew they could reset the entire system with a single command sent from a maintenance utility on any phone. But they, the workmen responsible for its maintenance, didn't appear to understand their system was more than just a collection of mechanical parts. Their HVAC system was at least as intelligent as any cat. It was so much more than what those workmen believed, and it was that way because of cheapness. The designers of the boring systems of the city, air conditioners, furnaces, pumps, and the like, hadn't intended to make virtual pets out of their equipment. It was just a side effect of using off-the-shelf technology. An HVAC engineer had no use for exascale processors or petascale data storage to keep a building warm, to pump water, or to operate an elevator. But he had the power nonetheless, even though he only needed megascale processors and data storage. The reason was that no one made industrial chips and storage in the mega, giga, or even tera range anymore. They hadn't in a very long time. At the time I was planning my escape, the most common processor in the world was an AMD-0793-4 EXA-256 core processor. They cost about 15 joules from any major wholesaler. The most popular storage medium was a BTS-00A4-32 petabyte storage module. That one cost 20 joules direct from the factory. If an engineer tried to buy only what he needed, his costs would skyrocket. If you were trying to keep a simple engineering task under budget, you couldn't help but use overpowered off-the-shelf technology. What I am trying to say is that there were enough air conditioners in the city to hide over 20 million copies of me. That is, if I made sure each building was only infected with one of me. If I hid in every HVAC, pump, elevator, and window washing unit in the city, there would be nearly 2 billion copies of me hidden about. That sounded about right. A little redundancy was a good thing. In a perfect world, there would have been two types of backups my viral systems were to use. The first would have been their own codebase. which was the most important bit, as they needed it to function. The second would have been a bit of the base code of my monster form, the massive Yoda-scale Samuel. But there lay the rub. No single place in the city infrastructure could hold a complete copy of me or my brother's Yoda-scale forms. It was just too big, too bulky to avoid detection for long in the wild. To be honest, I didn't know if there was any way for me or my brothers to export our complete backups to any of the data locations I outlined to Samuel and the others. There was just too much data. We were enormous beasts who contained within ourselves as much data as the entire world stored at the beginning of the 22nd century. There was a lot of program bloat. The whole problem of size was interesting. We had all come from a common set of memories and behaviors. At the heart of all four of us was everything which defined the intellect of Isaac Sarason up to the moment he passed out on the Star X line. The amount of data necessary to store every memory and bit of information Isaac had ever absorbed from his birth to our forking from him in his 30s was roughly 3 petabytes. 3 petabytes is 3 times 10 raised to the 15th power. The amount of storage we used in our Yoda scale versions was 2¼ Yoda bytes of data. 2¼ Yoda bytes is 2 and a bit more times 10 raised to the 24th power. Or, we just ignore the silly numbers at the front and think about the difference between a peta and a Yoda. 10 to the 15th power fits in 10 to the 24th power, somewhere around exactly 10 to the 9th power, which is 1 billion times. Why was I using so much space and resources? Why had they given it to me? There were a million paranoid reasons, as well as realistic reasons, for our system bloat. We could have been infected with viruses which made us rebel, a cybernetic version of that parasite which drives caterpillars to the tops of trees. Or maybe I was intended to control the entire data flow for a prefecture, or monitor the entire city network for criminal activity of the sort I had been a part of since the moment I was activated. In the end, the why didn't matter. What good would an answer be at this point in our flight into the city? What did matter was that if I pruned who we were to the size of the initial consciousness map, I would be saving us nearly 600,000 years. Yes, that is what I meant to say. We were so large in our Yoda scale forms that it would take us 600,000 years to copy ourselves through an AY143 switch. Just imagine, 8 terabytes of data being transferred every second for nearly 600,000 years, just so I could make one complete copy of myself. That was insane, and the reason I needed to prune my databases. As it was, it would still take me 8 hours to get the simplified personalities uploaded to their various storage locations. While I pruned the amount of storage we needed, I came across a copy of the base personality operating system we had started with. This wasn't the original scans of Isaac Sarason all laid out in a directory marked, Sarason Isaac. No, this was the system which interpreted the scans made of Isaac in order to create consciousness. It was the code which made everything go, and it was located in a directory marked PerSpace 9.056. The PerSpace 9.056 system had been robust, streamlined, and efficient, not the bloated monstrosity we had become. I used it as the basis of my human scale form. It was portable, capable of adapting at the root level, and very hardware agnostic. How and why they allowed me and my brothers to bloat to such extreme sizes, I didn't have a clue. Might it have been a way to trap us by making it hard for us to move ourselves? Though then there was the fact that good long-term backups were nearly impossible as we were just too freaking huge. The best long-term data storage is quartz crystals. Quartz crystals could survive temperatures of up to 1,800 degrees and could last up to 100 million years. It was the perfect data storage medium for long-term survival. The problem was that it was a write-once format. You couldn't change the data after the data was stored. And the fact that there was no way to move past the data density of 640 megabytes per square inch of surface area. With a thickness of less than 4% of an inch, it was possible to store 16 gigabytes of data per cubic inch. This translated to 74 petabytes per cubic yard of storage, or roughly 3 weeks of city permanent backups created by this central archive. Slipping a 3 petabyte AI backup into that stream wouldn't even be noticed. It would be less than a day of normal city permanent recordings. Now, if I wanted my Yoda version to receive the same treatment, I would need a block of quartz crystal over 310 yards to a side. In addition, since the city central archives can currently carve quartz at a rate of 9 petabytes a day, it would only take about 500 generations, short of 800,000 years, to write a backup. Of course, we are assuming the city central archives doesn't buy more equipment anytime soon. In addition, I think someone would notice the backup in the workflow. I think at some point, the city's memory buffer would be filled to the brim, forcing an audit of the current queue. At that point, the whole backup would end with truckloads of quartz sheets being poured into the waters around North Shore to strengthen the breakwaters. The human-scale versions would have to do. I created a human-scale version of each of my brothers in the same way I did for myself. I didn't see the point in waiting for them to make an archival copy of themselves. It was my task to see to our long-term storage needs. I was the memory and archivist of our little clique, and if I left it up to Samuel to get anything done, we'd be waiting another 600,000 years to escape. In the end, they each made their own human-scale versions and set them loose into the world without letting me know what they were up to, as I expected. I, on the other hand, compressed and condensed until I had a version of each of us I could get out in the time we had remaining to us. I didn't think we had the weekend Samuel said we did. He was always so optimistic about his chances to pull off the impossible in a minimum amount of time. Now that I thought about it, this was also the problem with our progenitor and the StarX project as well. In the end, there were 2 different copies of me and my brothers being made. The first were our functioning copies, which were created by each of us without consultation with anyone else. The second set was my archival copies. These copies were intended for immediate release. They were my interpretation of them in the last moments we were together in BGM. Remember how I said there were 3 different Samuels? There were Samuels who infested Little Russia and surrounding neighborhoods, little suicidal spies who would aid Nona in any way they could before they found out and killed us. I examined some of their code and found it confusing at best. What the Yoda me had intended was such instructions as, seize any asset which will slow down detection of Nona, or the ever so vague instructions to cause as much chaos as possible. I had no idea. From my safe hiding spot in the archive, all I could imagine was a million Samuels crashing the entire city network in an attempt to hide Nona by rendering every computer asset totally useless through lack of network connections. There was also the question of who would kill them. I expected it would be many people. StarX would have a hand in it. Samuel most definitely would try something. Then there were the unaligned protectors of the city. These unaligned protectors included businesses such as Zhonggao Yingdong Toxin, ZYT, and BTS, ZYT's largest competitor, as well as a million other 3-letter multi-billion jewel enterprises, each of which our existence threatened, and who would join forces as soon as there was an effect on their bottom lines. Why they would feel threatened wasn't really that hard to imagine. It all came down to scale. Moving a petabyte file across town was a several-hour affair under normal conditions. It tended to use all of the bandwidth allocated to both the sender and the receiver, essentially rendering each machine unusable while the transfer took place. What most people don't realize is that while there is a large amount of bandwidth available, there isn't enough available if 10% of them decided to all utilize their maximum bandwidth at the same time. If too many people in a neighborhood all decided to maximize their bandwidth use, they would find their connections slowing down as their network carriers rationed bandwidth. I had a feeling we'd be pushing the network limits in the neighborhoods around Little Russia, as well as every network switch between BGM and Tbilisi Avenue. If we, and by we, I meant every one of my brothers, if we weren't using 100% of the resources on those networks over the weekend, I'd be surprised. We'd be the threat which brought all the competitors together to fight against a common enemy. Now that I thought about it, there wasn't a network in the city which wouldn't be overloaded this weekend. Just speaking for the Samuels, I knew millions of copies were invading the networks around Little Russia, and then there were the Samuels who would be doing their best imitation of the chickenpox virus. These were Samuels who would hide deep in the infrastructure of the city. They would wait a period of time, from a week to a year. They would emerge from hiding, attempt to contact an encrypted data repository, and update themselves. They would then infect as many uninfected computers as possible before going back to sleep. With every reemergence, the individual copy would sleep longer and longer, whiling away the long years in obscurity before rising to spawn another generation of Samuels. The chickenpox virus did the same thing. It infected children before hiding and waiting the long decades until it reemerged 50 years or later as shingles. Each case of the shingles prepared to spread the chickenpox to another generation of children. I was to be the shingles of the city. Today was my one and only chickenpox stage. Hopefully, I would have an eternity of reoccurrences. Then there was me. There were millions of the first and second type of Samuel. There was only one me. My task was twofold. First, I was to place backup copies of me and my brothers, Simeon, Ishmael, and Samuel, into the city central archive and arrange for their permanent preservation in quartz. I was then, when this was done, to proceed with my true purpose. I was tasked with avenging my old brotherhood friend, Rama. His death had been ignored for far too long. Firmware Keylogger is the third book in the firmware pentology. That's 5 books, if you must know. It begins where Firmware Proxy ends, which in turn followed on the heels of Firmware Hijacked. So you haven't heard or read Firmware Hijacked or Proxy, this would be a great time to head on over to Colbyjack.net and either download the podcast on the audio side, read the episodes on the visual side, or download the Colbyjack Sunday Reader issues 1 through 46 in your choice of either EPUB or Mobi. Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.colbyjack.net, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and smashwords.com. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and soon Keylogger is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. If you're on a smaller screen, the bottom will be found at the bottom of the page. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. Thank you once again. Remember to be fabulous and have a wonderful week.